Story 1. In the fall of 2018, I traveled to Southern California to help my sister move from one apartment to another after moving all of her belongings. I decided to stay for a few days to do some sightseeing and enjoy the nice weather. My sister's new apartment was bigger than her previous one, so she started looking for furniture on Craigslist. I joined her search and was able to find a cute little table that would fit perfectly in her new apartment. It seemed like a pretty good deal. I showed it to my sister, and she really liked it. I contacted the seller, and we arranged to meet the next day to buy the table. The seller turned out to be a man named Brian. He said he lived with his wife and seemed like a nice guy. It appeared from our communications that my sister needed to work the next day, so she gave me the money, and I went to pick it up. To pick them up for her, I drove to Brian's house and arrived at 6:00 p.m., which was the time we met. He lived in a pretty nice neighborhood. The houses had a lot of character, and we were pretty close to each other. Brian's house was at the end. He had tall bushes all around his yard like a fence. I thought it looked pretty cool, so I texted him that I was there. He said he had a table in the garage, and I could just walk over and meet him there. I got out of the car and walked up to his driveway. The driveway was very unusual. It went down like a hill and curved around the corner to his garage, which was adjacent to the back of his house and was almost behind him. It was a 2-car garage, and I saw that it was open. I went into the garage, but I didn't see Brian. It was a dimly lit garage, but it looked pretty typical, with paint containers on the sides, spare tires, and things like that. There were no cars in the garage, however. I saw a table standing next to the door leading to his house. I started to walk over to the door to knock on it for Brian. As I got to the door of the house, I heard the garage door close behind me. As soon as the doors closed, all the lights went out, the garage went completely black, and I couldn't see anything. I had a bad feeling. I went to the door and turned the knob, but it was locked. I texted Brian asking what was going on, but the number was blocked. I knew I was in danger, and I had to get out of there. Using the flashlight on my phone, I looked around the garage and fumbled my way to the garage door. I tried to find the handle on it, but couldn't find it. I started pounding on the door and kicking it. I hoped I could break it, or one of the neighbors would hear the noise and come to the door to the house, which then swung open. I looked around and saw a man enter the garage. The house was dimly lit inside, so the garage wasn't lit at all, and I couldn't get a good look at the man. He closed the door behind him, and I could hear him walking slowly toward me. I shined my flashlight, but he was too far away for me to see him. I heard his footsteps walking along the edge of the garage. I looked around frantically and saw another door behind some wooden debris. I pushed them aside and even threw one in his direction. I don't think it hit him because I heard them hit the floor, but I tried to open the door, and to my surprise it opened. I ran out as fast as I could and rushed down the driveway to my car. I got in my car and immediately called the police. When they arrived, I led them into the house. But Brian, or whatever his name was gone. I found out later that the house belonged to a man who was out of town, and someone had broken into it to put an ad on Craigslist. I don't know what could have happened to me in the garage, but I'm just happy I got away. Story 2. A couple of years ago, I was living in a small house in New York City. I purchased some cabinets on Craigslist that I really liked. However, I couldn't install them myself, so I went back on Craigslist to find someone who could do it. I found a man named Jim who had very low prices, so wanting to save money, I contacted him and told him about my cabinets. He responded quickly, saying he could do it. We agreed that he would come and install the cabinets the next day. It was a Saturday when he arrived, and it was about 10 o'clock in the morning. Immediately, I had goosebumps running down my spine. We talked briefly about work, and he seemed a little off to me. I was a little anxious to let this man into my home, which I lived in alone, but I thought maybe it would be okay. And after a few more minutes of awkward silence, he got to work. It was a pretty easy job for someone with experience, and he didn't seem to have any problems. I left to go into another room to take care of my computer, but he kept asking me to come back and take a look. I found that strange. He would always pause, look at me for a second, and then go back to work. I told myself I was just being paranoid and trying to ignore my anxious feelings. At one point, I went back into the other room to my computer and heard him stop working. And then I saw his head appear from around the corner to look at me. I got really sick of it. Finally, when he was finished, I paid him the money and wished him a good day. He insisted on giving me a hug before walking out the door. I was so glad he finally left, and I told my friends about it. I was able to laugh it off as just another creepy guy. The rest of the day went well, and after watching a movie on TV, I started to drift off to sleep. I was very relaxed until I thought I heard the noise of the back door slowly opening. I knew I didn't hear it, but I turned off the TV sound so I could listen. It was definitely my back door, and when it stopped, I jumped out of bed, walked over to my bedroom doorway, and looked out. I saw a man walking around the corner. Our eyes met for a split second, and I quickly slammed the door shut and locked it. I heard him go to the door and try the handle. I yelled to him that I was calling the police and ran to the nightstand to get my phone. I dialed 911 and started to tell them what was going on. They told me to stay on the line until the police arrived. The man started banging on the door, trying to break it down. He knocked for about a minute, and then it went quiet. I heard him leave, but it wasn't 30 seconds before I heard him again. He went back to the door and started shaking the knob hard. Then he started knocking again. It seemed like the door was about to come off its hinges. I thought about jumping out the window or hiding in the closet when I thought I couldn't take it anymore. I heard sirens outside. A few seconds later, I heard someone yell police. And then a man started screaming. About a minute later, I came out of the room and saw the arrested man and several police officers in my house.